My name is Jacob Stoops, and you're listening to the Page 2 Podcast, my podcast about the reality of being an SEO, in which I chronicle the real-life stories, experiences, challenges, and advice from some of the most amazing people in the industry. Today, we talk to Nick Eubanks, founder and CEO at From the Future and co-founder of Traffic Think Tank. Outside of being a damn good SEO, Nick is an entrepreneur who started his first company by 19 and sold his first company at 24. We talk about what it's like to run a business at such a young age and how to deal with the pressure that can lead to. We talk about his inspiration for starting Traffic Think Tank. We get deep into SEO and talk about why he chose to make $30,000 the minimum engagement for his agency. Talk about how a simple technical SEO change led him to drive over 1 million incremental visitors to one of his clients' websites, as well as the importance of intent optimization when developing content, and much, much more. So get your popcorn and get dialed in as we tell Nick Eubanks' SEO story. Hello, everybody. We are here with Nick Eubanks, founder and CEO at From the Future and co-founder of Traffic Think Tank. How are you doing, Nick?
I'm good, man. How are you today?
I am. I'm awesome. I'm awesome. This is a different meeting time that I'm used to. I'm used to doing these recordings late at night, and I'm actually thankful that I am doing it now midday, and that we'll both not have to stay up deep into the night when we'd probably rather be doing other things.
Yeah, that's I can absolutely appreciate that.
Yeah, so definitely appreciate you coming on. And for my guests, I've been following Nick on Twitter for quite a while, not in a creepy way, but in the SEO industry, right? You kind of follow the players and watch for the advice. And the SEO community is really good about kind of giving information back and not gatekeeping information, and Nick has been somebody that has been well integrated into the SEO scene for quite a while now, and not only that, especially lately, has been part of some pretty big goings on that I think we'll be able to talk to today that are pretty cool within the space. But for those people that don't know you, Nick, could you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
I don't know why that's like that. It's always like a hard question. Really into finding opportunities to leverage search and leverage centers of influence, places where there's existing demand, and finding ways to take the traffic or the audience that's already there and steal parts of it and have it and send it where I want. But at the end of the day, I think main passion more than anything is probably building websites. Just been building like piece of crap websites is how it all started. Just been building websites for so long. I was in a conversation a couple of weeks ago where I was talking to somebody, a friend of mine locally who owns a web development company, and we were just going through and they were talking to me. He's like, yeah, I think we just built our 1,000th website. And I started thinking back. It's like, how many sites have I built? Like, how many sites have we built, or like have I been a part of, like as part of teams? And it's somewhere in the hundreds. It's probably like close to, if not over 500 sites. And it's just wild to realize that I don't think that's like a common identity, at least not in the SEO space. I don't think a lot of people are like, I just actually really like building websites. That's why I'm doing this.
It's your little slice of the internet.
It's weird. It's weird though. It's a weird thing. Cause like, I don't think of myself as a website builder, but like that's really what it all sort of distills down into.
So I think that one of the things that you have experience in, and not in my mind, not many SEOs have this type of kind of double experience, is you're an entrepreneur. You built your first company, built, however you want to say it, your first company at 19, and you sold your first company at 24. And obviously you're now running From the Future and Traffic Think Tank. So I guess take us through what that is like from the more entrepreneurial side of things.
The company at 19 was a painting franchise where I had almost 30 employees and was running around and people were paying me thousands of dollars to paint their biggest assets, which is wild now that you would write a $5,000 check to I don't know if I would write myself, my 19-year-old self, a check and be like, paint my house. So the fact that anybody gave me money to do that, wow. But yeah, I think we painted like 42 houses. I ran 3 crews, made a decent chunk of money, saved none of it, just bought like a nice car immediately. And then, sort of fell into digital. Like I feel like most people, at least my age, I think like if you're in your 30s or older, like this was a total accident. Mm-hmm. But yeah, building the building of the companies, the designing of the products or services, and the finding of the people, and like that's the fun part, at least for me. Like I think that's the part I enjoy the most. It's the running of the companies that's very difficult, and so I just hire people smarter than myself to do that part.
So I know what I was like at 19, and I know I was to kind of agree with you. I was nowhere near. I was lucky to like even have a job, let alone people cutting me checks. So what was it like? And even now, you're still fairly young. What is it like being responsible for so many people's livelihoods?
It's a pretty scary feeling. Something that I think me and my wife talk about a fair bit these days is like she's building her first company, and she's got like her first few employees, and just like going like seeing her going through that same sort of state of like, oh my God, like if these people don't pay me by this time, then I'm gonna have to float the expense for payroll, like that whole thing. Mm-hmm. I don't miss that as much, but having a giant payroll is definitely something that'll keep you up at night, and I don't know how certain people do it. I don't know, like these the big agencies, your 500 plus person agencies where payroll is millions of dollars every 2 weeks. That's something that I've intentionally decided that I just don't ever want, which is why I think our plan is to sprint to get 100 of the right clients, and then we're done. That's like we're going to have 100 client list, and that will be all the clients we have. Just because I don't want a huge team. I don't want a huge list of clients. But that's like been just sort of like a recent realization. Like, I think I just really realized that like in December.
So I want to get into from the future, but I will say that the article that came out recently that kind of piqued my interest and led me to like, hey, I think having Nick on the podcast to kind of tell his story a little bit would be really, really interesting, is you wrote an article about your minimum engagement for it being around 30K. And you had a really cool rate card that's very specific to length of engagement. And I will say one of the things that, especially on the agency side, that I run into is what I guess I call project SEO, which to me, it's difficult because it implies kind of a short time frame, and it's really difficult, especially as an agency when you're dependent on other people for implementation, and when you're looking for more of a longer term partnership. So can you, I guess, tell me what went into that minimum engagement, why 30K, what the deal is there and the benefit?
Yeah, and it came about from it's funny. I was on 24 Hours of SEO yesterday, and literally just spoke specifically to how frustrated I am when I meet people, and I ask about their pricing, and they're like, "This is my price," and it's like, "Why is that your price?" It's like, "Well, that's the market average." Like that, like arbitrary pricing is ridiculous to me. So like coming up with our pricing based on like what are our costs look like, and like on our costs are based on like supporting our UVP, like our unique value proposition is the mix of talent that we have. So like our average project team there's design influence, there's development influence, there's content strategy. Like it's all of these other components. It's not just like, all right, cool. Like you are an SEO client. So like, here's your senior, like you're going to be this account manager's person. And like, you'll have these like little SEO analysts running around doing work for you. Just because that's like it's not how the internet works these days. And so many people aren't capable of like, so many clients don't have the resources to do the implementation and to do it correctly. So I think that was like a really big differentiator when we got started. I think that's something that we've really started to lean on. Only in 2018 did we really start to build like a true design department. Like we had like a designer before that, and like we had some other people like who aren't designers, like have a good eye for design, but like 2018 was really the first time we were intentionally like, all right, we need to build a dedicated design department. And funny enough, realizing that was like actually like it bifurcated into design and UX. Now we have both, and like they're separate departments because visual design is not user experience. Like they play in the same wheelhouse, but they're different, right? So, so pricing was based on, a minimum net margin, a minimum target net margin, and being able to have our average project team have all of the roles that we think are needed.
Yeah, that's it's pretty interesting. And in the like I said, the thing that I liked about it was that the rate was much higher with the shorter term engagement, just because I feel like I don't want to say risk isn't the right word, but when you're looking for long-term partnerships and you know that the implementation may not come until later on in the contract just due to unforeseen circumstances or limitations, it certainly over the course of time doesn't make sense, especially as an SEO, maybe in other project-based environments, but with SEO, shorter term engagements in my mind, it's sometimes been hard to prove out the value of what you're doing. So tell me, I guess, about from the future, like how did you start that? What led you to that?
It was honestly just supposed to be a tax shelter at first. I had a blog in 2014. I had a blog that I started in 2012. Really stupid name, SEO Nick. It was a .net because I couldn't get the .com at the time. And I wanted to write more about search, and I started writing a couple things, and started to build up a somewhat small audience, and then put out like people were like, well, how do you monetize a blog? Well, put a product out. So I like on a whim, like on the drive to Vermont, for a snowboarding trip, I made my friend drive, which I'm very grateful for because I spent like the 7 hours of that drive creating this entire product. Like I just wrote this email sequence and sold it, put it up for sale for like $67 and sold it, a whole bunch of it. It got really popular. So I ended up with revenue in 2013 from that, and then got slapped with this massive tax bill, and was like sort of blown away. I was like, well, like, all right, how do I make sure that doesn't happen again? Mm-hmm. So, it was sort of just learning kind of late to the game, like, oh, like self-employment tax, and like, oh, like I'm paying for all this stuff with, post-tax dollars that really should be pre-tax expenses. And so it was just an LLC to like shield me from all of that tax liability. And then I was at a meetup and like ran into a guy that I had known just from the local SEO industry. And he's like, we're looking for an agency for help. Our budget's $15,000 a month. Would you guys want the contract? Just like, well, I guess. So I was full time at Traffic Safety Store. So that was the point where I was like, all right, well, I need to find some people to do this work. So it was all very sort of accidental. And it wasn't until I brought on somebody to run operations full time that like we really experienced any sort of growth or like intentional growth. That was like really the big shift was like this, like bringing on an operations person, like changed everything. And like we suddenly like, grew into a real company, and 3 years later broke $1 million. And then it was like, well, it's time to probably actually like go focus on this thing and go there full time. So, but yeah, it's sort of just a happy accident. This was not, I had an agency before in 2007 and was terrible at running it. We got lucky and ended up building a clunky, lightweight CMS on CodeIgniter, and we ended up getting somebody to buy the company just to buy the CMS. And that was like a stroke of good luck because I had no idea what I was doing then, and definitely was not equipped to run an agency for the long term. So that was a happy accident in and of itself.
Yeah, like Bob Ross, happy accident. So traffic think tank, I wanted to get into that. And before we get into that, I wanted to preface it by saying kind of one of the common themes that I've experienced, I guess in my own experience, in talking with other people on the podcast, and coming from a startup where I know a lot of businesses are founded based on the idea that there's a problem and a lack of a service in the market where there should be a service. And as it stands really today, there's not really a great way to go to college and learn SEO, at least in the way that it should be learned. And we've talked a lot about most SEOs, especially those of us that have been in the industry for more than 5 or 10 years, didn't get into it intentionally. And the folks coming out of college with more of a general marketing degree are rarely, in my experience, able to, or rarely ready to be what it means to be a good SEO right off the bat. It takes some time. But I feel like you guys, with what you've done with Traffic Think Tank, are kind of filling that market with respect to learning. But even still with that, there's still not a great way to learn SEO in a formal college type environment. Yeah, so it's kind of a weird industry and a weird thing with that respect. But talk to us about Traffic Think Tank and kind of what went into starting that with your partners.
First thing I think I'll let you know is we are working on a more formalized training program for like getting started. So like Traffic Think Tank, sometime in probably the next month or two, we'll have like a separate course platform where we're going to take, like, at this point, I think it's almost 400 hours, like all the exclusive content, group it all into topics, and like actually more formally lay it out. Like, here's what you should read and watch and do. Like, here's the activities to like immerse yourself and like gain some understanding in the space.
That's awesome.
So hopefully that does do a better job at sort of filling that market need. But Traffic Think Tank was launched in 2017 by me. I had 32 members. I just launched it to my email list, and it was all in Kajabi and a private Facebook group. And it went reasonably well. Like, I realized like there was this like sense of community that was sort of happening, but like Facebook wasn't the right medium for it. And so like having had conversations with Ian for a while about like, hey man, like we should do something together. Just cause I like and respect the guy. And then, Matt Barbie had been a longtime friend of mine, but digitally we'd never met in person. So like I just tapped these guys. I was like, hey, like I'm going to relaunch this as a Slack channel. Here's the price point, but like I'm going to need help. Like I'm not going to be able to build this community and moderate it and run it myself. I need other people that know what the hell they're doing and offer some different perspectives. Like, Matt runs all of SEO and digital strategy for a public company that sells software, and Ian does it for a public company that's built on lead gen. And those felt like those married up really well with an agency perspective. So, we launched it. We got to like 20 grand our first month, just the relaunch without really any advertising. Steadily been picking up between 5 and 10 grand in recurring revenue ever since. We ended up getting to, we broke 500 grand in ARR last year in 11 months. That was a nice milestone. We're trying to get to the $1 million ARR mark this year. I think we'll get there. We're still picking up steam, 8 to 9% MRR growth per month. I'm learning a lot about churn. Like the software companies that I built and sold, I called them software companies, but it was really like they were embedded users. So like one was a CMS and the other was actually sort of a CMS too. It was a consumer review website that we built as a web app, and then a Japanese company bought it. So they weren't software that had customers. It was apps that functioned as parts of websites, and the users were really just visitors. But like, so having like, I've never had to manage churn before. So like, that's been a really interesting lesson to learn. Like a good month will have 2 or 3% churn or negative churn. And like a horrible month is like 7% churn. And seeing cancellations happen and like not being able to understand scrambling to get people's feedback. Like, hey, like, sorry to see you go, but what did we do wrong? Like, how do we fix this? It's a very new place to be in. So, it's been a fun experience. And I think the most unexpected thing that's come out of it, has been how much I learn inside that group, on like a weekly basis.
So 2 things. If somebody doesn't know what it is, so I strongly advise, if you're listening to this podcast, go to trafficthinktank.com. It's a pretty awesome idea and a pretty awesome service, but if somebody doesn't know what it is, can you kind of explain it?
Yeah, so we the best way I've heard it referred recently was as like an SEO insurance plan. I thought that was really cool. I mean, it's really meant to be like, we position it as like a training, as like a training community, but it's really just it's more of like a tight knit community more than anything else, where there's like the people in there will care about you and your business, and you'll get like honest answers and honest feedback. So like we have people in there who are just starting out an in-house career, or they might have a small agency, or they might be a freelance consultant, and they're just like, hey, I've got this client in this space. Here's the traffic drop that I just experienced, or I'm getting attacked with negative SEO. Like, they'll bring specific scenarios and they'll just be like, I just need support. Like, these are my ideas. What do you guys think? So like a lot of it is sort of this like reinforcement. But there's also like, there's people in there from, like, we've got people in there from HubSpot, not just Matt, but HubSpot, Indeed, Uber, Google. We've got people who work at Google. Like these people are also in there. They're in, like, these are various like more established seasoned digital marketers, and they're just in there to have the conversation. To be like, hey, like, we just launched this big content campaign and we're doing, these 10 things. What do you guys think? Like, is there anything that I didn't think of? Is there anything I can do to amplify this? Or do you think my implementation was right for like this one piece of this thing? Like, it's just like a very open discussion where people seem very, very invested in helping one another, which is great, but like that wasn't expected.
Do you find that you, Matt, and Ian have to spend a lot of time being kind of the primary moderators or content producers, or do you find that the community has taken over that responsibility?
There was an inflection point that that happened probably right around like 300 people, where we would get notifications, and like if I'll be in a meeting and I'll see a notification on my phone. It's like, all right, cool. Like, remind me about that in an hour when I know I have like some free time blocked out, and I'll get back and I'll go into it, and there'll be 10 people that have already answered it, and they've gone into more detail than I could ever even imagine. But yeah, in the beginning, it was definitely a lot more of our time. I think we each still spend probably 10 hours a week, like each of us, just hopping in there or creating content for it. But yeah, the community does a lot of the blocking and tackling at this point.
That's awesome. Yeah. So I was recently at a company called startups.co, which did a similar thing, but it was more specific to startups and business and so on and so forth, where it was a paid Slack community.
I wrote a blog post for your blog.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. So I probably saw it, and I probably managed it or put it into the system at some place, or maybe my colleague Steph may have. Yeah. But yeah, I came from there and did a lot of SEO work for them. They were kind of in dire need, but also it was cool to watch the startups live, which I think they might have shut it down. Not sure why, because people were engaged, but it was a pretty cool thing to watch grow as well. Similar. So you guys recently put together a pretty big event for Traffic Think Tank, and most people think of events as in going. What was it like to actually put it together?
Oh, it was a nightmare. It's like one of the stupidest things I've ever done. I mean, it went well, but like it just felt like it. Like I was a basket case leading up to it, especially since it was here. Like, because Ian lives in Charlotte and Matt at the time lived in Boston. We're like, all right, we'll pick. Philly's right in the middle, so let's do that. So like having to find the venue, negotiate all the pricing, the catering, the speakers, the technology, getting the flyers printed, and all of it. Like, I have a newfound respect for event coordinators, event planners, because I will never do that again. Like, I think we're going to do an event this year, like we'll do a 2020 event, but we're hiring somebody. Like, somebody else will get paid to do all of that, because I hated it. It was all the planning coordination was just so much. But yeah, we sold out the first event. It wasn't big. I mean, it would be big, but it was 350 people. But it went really well. I was shocked that, we actually sold it out, and am I talking my numbers wrong? Is it 150 people? Might have been 150 people. I don't remember the number. It was a smaller like group though. But it was just big enough that we were able to sell it out, and it went really well. Funny, we actually just got all the videos back this week, so they literally all the speaker videos and the Q&A and everything just got uploaded into Slack yesterday.
Yeah, and I would have to imagine, like, you have to start somewhere, right? I would have to imagine that as long as you guys continue to commit to putting it on, that it will that it will continue to grow, especially as your membership grows within Traffic Think Tank, and that becomes kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. And it's like, I guess I anticipated that you would say it was probably awful to plan, and I think about like moving into my house and how the last time I did it myself and did all the moving, and never again hiring a mover. not going to happen again. So you recently, and I think it was on, I can't remember if it was on your site, personal site, or if it was on your agency site, recently released a case study about the impact of technical SEO and how you guys were able to grow a campaign or a site's traffic quite significantly with only technical SEO. Can you talk about that a little bit? Get into
So I mean, technical SEO. I think one of the biggest misunderstandings out there is that like everybody needs it. Like it's great to like have a site that's in good health from a technical perspective, but like the bigger the site, the more likelihood that like there's like little things that are broken that are holding back really big growth. So like with a UGC site, user generated content site, it was a music hosting site called Your Listen. There was just a bunch of stuff that was just like never built right. And like they were able to get traffic sort of in spite of themselves. I think they just sort of had crossed like that brand threshold just enough where Google's like, yeah, your site's a piece of crap, but like we're going to show your site anyway in search results. Because I think they had just enough branded traffic to do that. It was like culling the crawl budget, changing the sitemap setup, changing the way the pages were rendered, the internal link structure. Like it was just sort of basic on page, on site, like setup to make sure that that Google could crawl and understand the site the right way. Was all it really took, just like fixing it, and it just sort of set it on a path to grow on its own.
So the interesting thing is, I guess one of the things that I say all the time is I see these really, really advanced conversations. Probably the most recent one was whether or not click-through rate is a ranking factor. And there's many, many other really, really advanced conversations. And like, that's great. I love keeping up with that stuff. And it's really awesome to think about like, what does RankBrain do or whatever. But the real truth of the matter is that when we begin to work with a client, they're rarely in a place where they're ready for kind of that advanced level stuff. And it's usually basic blocking and tackling. And the problem usually is basic implementation that is a struggle to get them to implement some of your recommendations. Finding the stuff to fix is not the problem. Getting them to actually do it is more and it almost becomes like a psychological game. So there are times when I've found that from a technical perspective, if the site's really, really small, you may fix everything. There may not be much movement, but with bigger sites, like you said, one small change could lead to really, really big results in kind of a larger economy of scale. That's I don't know. I don't know how you feel about that, but
I mean, I would definitely agree. Like the bigger the site, usually the more changes you can affect with the smaller changes. But there's also like what's funny is I'm just remembering like a specific example that I can talk about where. So we're working with a big brand, big international multi-billion-dollar year brand. They're in the travel space. If you've been on our website and seen our client logos, it's very easy to figure out who I'm talking about. They have a small site, 1,000 pages or so, like very, very small site. And it's one of those things where like just going through like auditing the site, we realized that there was a canonical tag where it wasn't supposed to be on like a really important page. And because that page was canonical to the homepage, which was just stupid, it was effectively set to no index. So like it was one of those things where they have a 40-person development team. So like that's not a client we get to do implementation for. Like we will never get to touch that code base. But so it's just about sort of maintaining the health of the site, working through how implementation is going to happen, what the order of priorities are. Like that's a lot of what we're doing. But that was one where it's like, hey guys, like you just go delete this single line of code. Like just go remove this canonical tag from this page. Just like do that right now. And they did it. And the next week that page jumped to position 5 for a keyword that gets 123,000 searches per month. Just that one exact matched keyword and then all the variations, hundreds of thousands of searches per month. The next week, like within 7 days, like position 5, the page started to pick up like 40, 50,000 visits a month from there. And the page like that, those keywords alone turned that page into like sort of like an assisting sales page into like a direct organic revenue channel that I think is doing like 60 million a year. That's what it's contributing to their bottom line now, just that one page. So like there is shit like that. Like that's technical SEO, but like it's a rogue canonical tag that was just costing them a tremendous amount of money.
And it's funny because they're like, even now, even in 2019, there's still a perception with a lot of brands, people, executives that SEO is kind of this like magical art where and I always say like where we go and sprinkle our fairy dust on things and things magically work. And in that case, it was, and I guess I always take a practical approach. And in that case, it was very, very practically just helping them get out of their own way and helping them take advantage. Yeah.
That one was just, they had hired a shitty SEO company before, and there's a lot of them out there. So,
right.
There's, and a lot of them are way more affordable than we are. But you get what you pay for.
So how do you get past that barrier to getting people to understand that a certain level and a certain quality of service is worth the money before the point of committing the money? That can sometimes be a problem. I don't know. I've grown cynical in my old age. I've stopped really caring about pushing it too hard. Because what has started to happen, we've been around just long enough now. We're at like the 5-year mark where, cool, you went with a cheaper solution. Best of luck. We'll be here. We'll be here if anything changes. 12 months later, hey, so we went with that lower cost solution and we got a penalty. They relaunched our website and 50% of our traffic is gone. We're experiencing negative revenue from organic. Like it's just like a lot of those people come back, and then they'll be a client forever. Like just a funny sort of anecdotal experience. I'm in an e-commerce forum called E-commerce Fuel. It's a great place, by the way. Can't recommend it enough. It's run by a guy named Andrew Udary. He does a tremendous job. But there was somebody who in there this week who posted, they're like, hey, I just got this SEO proposal. And like, I've heard of this company before and they have huge clients. Like, Groupon is one that stood out, but like huge client, like Sony, Groupon. And I just went through this proposal and it's just like, oh my God, like this is terrible. Mm-hmm. Like just so bad. Like their list of like, here's all the things we found wrong. The first thing on the list, oh man, look at you have 200 pages that have multiple H1 tags. Really? Just another thing that was really funny that was in there was they highlighted that this company's website had 155 pages that had 302 redirects that were causing a no index. But what they didn't manage to highlight was those were URL parameters for the individual cart IDs that you would never want crawled or indexed anyway. Mm-hmm. Just pure bad advice throughout this whole thing. And like this was like a $22,000 a month proposal. So like there's, it's amazing how many people are out there selling services that have no effing idea what they're doing. So it's funny that you say that because I last year at the end of the year we were brought into, and we are a partner with a development agency, and then they kind of contract us out to take on some digital work, and they had us take a look at the SEO roadmap and strategy that had been given to them by another company that they were considering rehiring, and they were sitting on the contract because they just wanted to get a feel for like somebody else's perspective. And so they sent it over and they said, all right, this is the strategy. And it was really, honestly, the strategy was, and I kid you not, somebody had taken what looked like a screaming frog export and just given it to the client and said, that's the strategy. And it was just mind blowing. Within about 2 minutes of opening their roadmap and strategy document and their proposal and everything, I had to stop and I had to say like, okay, back up. Like this isn't let's just go back to them and this is garbage and let us help you out. Let us give you like a real professional audit. And then you can decide based on our audit versus their audit and strategy, whose is better and who you want to go with long term.
I've seen audits. I've seen people charge $2,000 for an audit, and the audit deliverable is screenshots out of DeepCrawl. Just paste it into Word documents.
Yep. And that's not a strategy, but some people think it is.
No, it gets absurd. So one of my favorite things has become hey, just let us put a proposal together for you. Not even straight. It doesn't even cost money. It does not cost you money to request a proposal from us. We'll put in the time and work. Just compare our proposal side by side to any other one you get, and you make the decision. Yeah. And I think, we're very fortunate to be at a place where the proposals sell themselves. So if we get a proposal in your hands and you are qualified, you have the budget, it's not often that we lose that business.
So one of the things that this podcast is about, obviously we want to talk tactics and we want to talk success stories, but we also want to talk about what's it really like to be in SEO. And one of the questions I like to ask people is, what have been some of your failures and learning moments?
So there's a test that we're still going through that didn't go as planned. And it's for a mixture of reasons, but so we work with a retailer, an e-commerce company, and they're pretty big, and they already have a tremendous SEO footprint. They rank really well for product queries, and their categories and subcategories with specific modifier sets work really well for them. But there's this whole class, there's this whole set of query classes that are the root query classes, that once you remove a product attribute specific modifier, that's where a lot of the big volume is. It's unqualified traffic, but there's way more volume. But they didn't have pages for these. They only had they had all these modifier sets that went all the way down, but they didn't have this generic level of page. So we were hey, let's create this list of 100 pages to go after this this few extra million searches per month in top of funnel search volume. It's not highly qualified, but they're qualified. They're middle of funnel pages. And so we created the strategy. We designed the requirements for here's the page level requirements for all these pages, and we're going to use some of your existing technical infrastructure. So you don't have to manually build the HTML for these pages. You're going to use they have a custom CMS. You're going to write a few calls to your database to pull in the right product sets to generate the render for these pages. And we push them out, and this is going to be great. Because they had already they were ranking bottom of page 1, top of page 2 already with their modifier pages for this generic query class. We're this is awesome. Google already thinks the site is relevant for these terms. We just don't have a page that's really a good result. That's a good target for them. So we're going to create these pages and they'll just pick up all this traffic. Push them out. They're slow to get indexed, and they're just and it's 2 or 3 months go by, and they're just they're getting no traffic. No traffic, 30 visits a month, nothing. And so it's what the hell's going on? So we go back through and we update all the internal links. We add internal links from some of the modified category pages. We go into their high traffic blog posts that have relevancy for the terms, get internal links going for them, create a new HTML sitemap for all the pages, stick a link to that in the footer. So hopefully that gets crawled and picked up, submit the XML version into GSC. Nothing, still nothing. So finally, we have one of our guys has the bright idea of going through all the pages and looking at them, and we're realizing that the technology stack that our client is using to generate the content on these pages is just broken. 70% of these pages are just empty. The page exists, there's a header and a footer and a navigation, and then there's just a big white hole where there's nothing. It's that's probably the problem. But we didn't pick, we were looking everywhere else except on the actual pages themselves. We're looking at are they indexed? Are they getting crawled? Do they have enough? Do we have internal links going to them? Should we start building external links? All these other things, as opposed to just paying attention to is the page rendering the way that we need it to? Because we just sort of assume the client has a big engineering team. They're not going to have broken pages on their site. They've got significant status resources and tools in place to check that to make sure these their pages are always rendering, because they make thousands of dollars a minute. But yeah, it was a miss from an implementation perspective on our end. How do you
I guess, what's it like to go to the client when you've built up probably in their minds how valuable this strategy is going to end up being, and how do you go to them with a mistake like that? How does that feel? Or what was your approach?
Well, it feels shitty, but the approach is very simple, right? The approach is like, hey, here we just did a benchmark audit, and we went through and we had one of our guys manually go through every one of your pages and answer these 3 questions. Is the page rendering with content on it at all? Yes or no? If yes, is it the correct are the products the right products for the configuration that they should be on the page? Yes or no? And then again, if yes, are all of the different models of product that need to be represented, that would make the page a good result for the generic version of the term, are they all on the page? Yes or no? And being able to be like, hey, here's all the pages. Here's these three questions that we need to be a yes all the way across. Here's all of the red boxes. So these are all the things that need to be fixed before we can actually say that this strategy is deployed to a level where we can gauge its effectiveness. Now, if those all get changed to yeses, and 30 days later we're still not getting traffic, then the conversation again becomes like, well, we tried this strategy. Here's all the data behind the strategy. Here's how it was executed. Here's why we believed it would work. It didn't work, but we need to make a change. And that brings me back to something we had talked about at the very beginning of this, which is the reason that we don't or rarely take on project-based SEO engagements is because SEO is as much an art as it is a science. And I think a big part of we want to work with companies that want a longer term partner, and they've got big lofty goals to really either increase profits from organic traffic or to bolt on SEO as an additional revenue channel. And understanding that we're going to do a whole bunch of stuff, and we're going to start with easy stuff first. And there's going to be wins along the way, but there's going to be stuff that doesn't work. And it just means we need to change the strategy. We need to try something else. And the right types of clients, the clients I think that understand just how much ROI there is to be had, like our travel client, for example, that now makes millions and millions of dollars a year in just extra money that will just be there forever, or until something goes horribly wrong. They understand that there's going to be wins along the way, but there's going to be stuff that doesn't work. But understanding that the sum of all of the parts, all of those little wins, is going to be so significant if you stick with it.
Yeah, and I think it's really important for your average day-to-day SEO. There are SEOs that have been doing this for a long time, and some well-known, some not. Not everything works, and I think that I remember being very early on in my career feeling like if I made a recommendation and it didn't work, there was almost a fear level of having to go to the client and say, this didn't work, we need to go back to the drawing board. But I think we're here to tell you it's okay. It's okay for something to not work. And while you certainly only hear about really positive case studies, there are plenty of case studies where things just didn't go the way you expected, and it even happens to the best of us. So totally okay. So let me ask you this: what do you love about the industry, and what do you hate about the industry?
I love that generally it seems it's a very giving industry. I think people are willing to help, and a lot of people are sort of willing to invest a lot of their time. Even a lot of the big names in the industry are very humble and are willing to answer emails and tweets and just offer information, which I don't think you get that with a lot of industries where the premium end of consulting gets into hundreds and hundreds of dollars an hour, for people to be so generous with their time. On the flip side, the thing I think I hate the most about the industry is there's a lot of people that have very big reputations, that probably haven't ranked a website in a lot of years, if ever. There's a specific handful of people that come to mind that I'm not going to name. They're yes, you write about SEO a lot. Yes, you speak about SEO a lot, but show me one commercial ranking that you have right now. I don't know if you've ever ranked a damn thing. I don't know if you understand how to.
Yeah.
So that gap between the thought leader, SEO celebrity, however the hell they say it, and practitioners, that is very frustrating. But a nice part about that for me is I feel a lot better about it because a lot of the practitioners are in Traffic Think Tank. So I get to talk to people that are actually out there ranking shit and making money every day.
Yeah, getting it done. Yeah, I've had my own experience with that, and I've talked about it a little bit. How it was a little bit frustrating for me being part of an agency where there were a couple of people that are kind of well known on, I guess, what I call the conference circuit, and going to those people and feeling like, all right, I've got a situation, and if anybody knows the answer, it's them, because everybody knows who they are, and they're like these celebrities at conferences, and they speak all the time. And asking them the question, or being on a client call with them and deferring to them, only to watch them get this deer in the headlights sort of look, like it just made me just pull my hair out and kind of question everything that I had believed before that point. And now I'm a little bit more cynical when it comes to SEO celebrity status, only because of those few people that I've run up against where it was exactly that. I don't know that they've ever actually successfully ranked anything in their lives, and it was incredibly frustrating for me. So yeah, so speaking of giving, you were recently given away as part of the DeepCrawl Go Red event. How did that get set up? What was that like?
Jennifer Hoffman, I think, has to take all the credit for that. DeepCrawl's really been doing a lot more with social impact. I think it's doing really well for them in terms of raising awareness. They're a great company. I love, being involved on their customer advisory board. We use their tool every single day, countless times. It's a staple tool within our SEO team. But yeah, I just thought that was a really cool idea. Funny enough, I have a friend here in Philly that started something similar, but it was called Philly Give and Get. But it was a similar idea where they would auction off people or experiences, and all of the money raised would go to one charity, and they would do these events a couple times a year. So it's cool to see some software companies hopping on sort of that same boat. I think it's for a great cause, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it definitely is for a great cause. And if you haven't subscribed to DeepCrawl or tried it out, if you're still using only Screaming Frog, and don't get me wrong, I love Screaming Frog. I strongly encourage you to go try out DeepCrawl. It's a really good enterprise crawling and technical SEO piece of, and I don't even want to call it software because it's not software, it's a website. But yeah, I would really, really encourage going and looking at that. Speaking of tools, what are your favorite tools? What tool set are you using?
We very much are not like an either or agency. I know a lot of people will pick one, like when you've got a couple tools that do the same thing, like they'll pick one. And from a cost perspective, I get it. I just don't, they all do slightly different things. So like we use Sitebulb, DeepCrawl, and Screaming Frog. There's different applications. There's things that each of them do better than the others. We have subscriptions to Ahrefs and SEMrush and Majestic because I can't imagine getting link data from just screw it. I love SEMrush, but their link data is crap and they know it. But I can't imagine getting link data from just Majestic or just Ahrefs. Plus there's different metrics at the domain level that we want from both. SEMrush we use mainly for link building because they're one of the only sources for organic traffic via an API. So they all have all these different tools. I realize I'm not doing a great job answering tool, but our stack right now, it's a long list. So everything I just mentioned, we pay for all of those. We also use Keyword Keg pretty heavily. I wonder if I'm forgetting any other obvious ones.
What does Keyword Keg do? I've not heard of that one before.
It's a 2-person team. Do you have the Keywords Everywhere extension installed?
I do not.
Man, so that, it's a super cool free extension. It all renders right in Google, and it turns anywhere, any tool that does any sort of keyword suggestion, it actually goes and hits the AdWords API and actually pulls in the data for you. So if you go use Keyword Shitter, which is a really goofy, funny tool, but for just generating keyword ideas in mass, but you have Keywords Everywhere installed, you'll get all the volume for all of those keywords displayed right there, in the window. It does the same, if you do a search on Google and you have Keywords Everywhere installed, it'll show you the volume for the term that you searched right at the top of the bar. It'll render a whole bunch of related terms down the sidebar. You can scroll to the bottom, all the related searches it'll display search volume for. But Keywords Everywhere is the extension, but Keyword Keg is the company behind it. Their paid service will allow you to drop in up to 500,000 keywords at a time to get data for. They don't have an API, but if you need to get a lot of data for a lot of keywords, it's one of the few tools you can use to do that.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I was reveling in the fact that basically, because we just went through a major kind of retooling exercise at my company, and honestly, we were aligned on pretty much every tool, and we ended up getting rid of a few tools where there was some unnecessary overlap and where we were basically double paying for things that we shouldn't have been double paying for. But I have not heard of Keyword Keg or Keywords Everywhere. So you learn something new every day, right? There are a bunch of tools out there that I'm sure that are awesome that I still haven't used or probably even heard of. That's another one. So what's kind of your favorite tactic? If you have to pick a tactic, what's your favorite go-to tactic of the moment?
The thing that is working, like we're seeing the biggest movements for clients, it's like probably generating the biggest return on investment right now, has honestly just been after the series of rank brain updates in Q4, well, starting August 1st, but then all through Q4, has been laser focusing on changing the intent of the pages. So like just rewriting existing pages to make sure that like we really are understanding like what is the current intent of the term, and removing any cross intent that might be happening. So like what's funny is like what worked real well leading up to those rank brain updates was, you have a commercial page, but in order to add additional relevancy, you might have some informational content on that page. Like you might be answering questions of like you might be answering what questions on a page that's focused on selling a service. And what we've seen afterwards is the splintering of the intent and the separation of those SERPs into like purely commercial versus informational, and like needing to remove all that informational content and making the page more focused on just the commercial side. So including things like what's the process for the approval, what's the cost, like if there's percentage rates or if there's interest rates, or like if there's anything that is going to make that page better representation of the commercial intent and answering the questions that somebody who's there to make a purchasing decision would, that is having profound effects currently. Yeah, and it's funny. I feel like I'm going through a very similar thing with a lot of our clients where we're driving content strategy, and it's that in and of itself is funny. A lot of what SEOs do is incredibly related to content and content strategy, but there seems to be within the industry, not on the marketing side, but on the people that pay us to do marketing side, the idea that those two things don't interact or should be siloed. But what I find is that as we're going through it, and as we're actually going through the process of optimizing the page or identifying what things we should try to show up for, nobody looks at search results and nobody looks at intent. And a lot of people say, I want to rank for this thing, and it gets 1,000 searches per month, but then they forget to go and look at the search results to see if, like, does that even matter to you? Is the page that you're trying to rank? That also matter? You totally just reminded me too. Something like a conversation that I've started having a lot more often. That is there's a shift that's happening, and it's realizing that more and more keywords that get searches don't get clicks. So like let's go after this keyword because it gets 10,000 searches per month, and it's like, okay, but like based on an estimate from Ahrefs, those 10,000 searches per month are resulting in 1,200 clicks. Mm-hmm. Who cares? Like let's go after this term over here that gets 4,000 searches and 3,000 clicks. So like shifting that mentality where it's not about search, like going after search volume, it's going after like what keywords actually result in clicks versus keywords that are essentially just initial entry points into a journey of refinement where that keyword is going to get refined 5 times before a click happens. And the funny thing is, as we've been going through the process, we've been learning more about keywords with a clear commercial intent, keywords with a clear informational intent, higher funnel, and then there are some where it's a mix of both. So the process that we've been having to go through is more trying to define what goes where. Should we create a separate page for one thing, the informational stuff, and a separate page for commercial, or should we create a larger hub? And trying to kind of balance those things out has been fun and interesting for sure. So
want to make sure I'm completely respectful of time. So I would say last question, if you're advising somebody who's getting into SEO this year, right at this moment, what would you tell them?
Build a website.
Why?
There's nothing. If you can't write HTML, and you don't understand how websites work, like you don't understand how to put one together, I think you're gonna have a really hard time understanding like how to do SEO or like what implementation is going to look like, or having any type of realistic expectations on what it takes to get changes made and just like get pages rebuilt and pages crawled and indexed. So like create your own website, set up a GSC account, try to rank your site for something. Even your name, like just do something.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, and I'm a proponent of tinkering on my own site. But I did see an interesting conversation on Twitter yesterday or 2 days ago where there was definitely some talk, and now this conversation was gender specific. I don't think our conversation has to be gender specific, but some talk about silos within types of roles within SEO. And I know from my experience that there are many, many folks that come into SEO without a technical background. And how would you suggest that those folks navigate the SEO landscape if they don't start with a technical background?
It's not even a technical thing. Like, you don't have to write a single line of code to build a WordPress website. Like, go spend $10 on a domain and spend $20 on a hosting package and read an article about how to set up your DNS. Like, to get the page to look the way you want it to, you might have to pay somebody to do some CSS, or like you might have to go in and, God forbid, write some HTML. But I don't even like that's not technical. Like I think that's like I think those are table stakes at this point.
Right. No, I agree. I definitely agree. It is my advice to almost anybody that asks me like, what can I be doing? What should I be doing to further my skill set? And one, be curious and read, and two, like go try it out. And for me, building my own website has been an invaluable experience that I'm still learning things every day. But there are some people that are, and I was just playing devil's advocate, but there are some people that are less inclined to do that. And I think that's to the benefit of those of us that are.
Yeah. Those people should, maybe go do something else, like cut grass or work at a restaurant, or I don't know.
Right. So where can people find you?
So I used to own like my whole brand SERP, and then this really talented kid from Florida started playing football, and I think he's going to go into the NFL, and he's got my name. So that SERP has been destroyed. But probably easiest way to still find me is he has not tried to purchase our name domain yet. So nickeubanks.com is probably the easiest. All the best content though that I've ever written is definitely on the agency site, which is ftf.agency.
Cool. And then Traffic Think Tank, for those of you that have not yet taken a look, is just at trafficthinktank.com. Highly recommend that you go there and maybe even consider paying for their services. I think it's tremendously valuable. But Nick, thank you for taking some time with me today, and thank you for being really candid and open and honest. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for putting up with it. So.
Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for listening to the Page 2 podcast. If you like this podcast, you can listen and rate it on a number of platforms, including Anchor.fm, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Radio Public, Applecast, Stitcher, Breaker, Castbox, and more. If you wish to support the growth of this podcast, please visit my website at jacobstoops.com/page2podcast or Anchor.fm/page2podcast to make a donation. Would be greatly appreciated. If you're an SEO who would like to be interviewed, I'd love to have you. Simply send me an email at jake.stoops@gmail.com and we'll absolutely set something up. Until next time, happy optimizing.